We are over time, so I want to welcome our next speakers. They really are leading the way in WA when it comes to compassionate communities and a city charter. So we're blessed to have them here today for them to share with us how we can achieve this in the southwest. So can I please welcome Dennis Wellington, the Mayor of the City of Albany, and also Lesley Pearson, the WA Primary Health Alliance Regional Manager from the Great Southern. They're here to share with you what a compassionate city charter is.
Thank you very much. To get us underway, before we actually do our formal presentation, we would like to show you a short film on Heather and Tony's story. So we'll commence with that. Thank you.
I'm 75, I've had a marvellous life, way beyond anything I ever would have expected, and I don't think there's anything that I would not do again, and it's a bit sooner than I had planned on, but I'm not having any negative thoughts at all about the whole thing. I'm actually finding it an interesting project to see how it develops, and the good, the bad and the ugly.
We're fortunate in that Tony is just such a positive person. He doesn't see this as, oh, you know, poor me and this, that and the other. He sees it in life. You know, it's just life. He's had a good life. He's done everything he wants to do. Yes, he'd like to do more, I'm sure, like all of us would. But there's nothing that he can say, I wish I'd done that.
Right at the moment, this treatment has reduced the size of the thing in my brain, which is inoperable, of course. And it seems to be stable, but how long it'll be, could be a day, a week, a year, who knows. The standard answer is when you ask 3 months, and in 3 months I'll see 3 months. I used to have a full head of hair, and I haven't had anything like that in 40 years, because I was a marathon runner and a cyclist.
We met at the running club, actually, in Perth. We were both runners. We'd finished a run through the park. I'd gone over to speak to some English friends of mine. Tony was talking to them, and about a year later he asked me out. It only took him a year.
Heather's a better cyclist than I am, but I've got some Australian titles on the velodromes, and it's been a significant part of our life. We own 27 bikes. Heather's a marvellous carer. In fact, too good. She does everything for me and always has. If you didn't have a carer, I don't know how you'd get on. We saw staying in the Cancer Council accommodation in Perth for long periods of time, 6 and 8 months at a time. And the one we stayed in was the one that was mainly single people, and they had to do everything for themselves, feed themselves, do their washing, do everything. If you didn't have a carer, establishing any of these sort of networks or activating them in whatever form you choose to do it, I think would be quite difficult. We had for many years been riding with the Albany Cycle Club, but of course they're all less than half our age. But then the over 50s club we learnt about. We've been riding with them. Well, they started out just every Wednesday for a long time, and we got to know them. There's quite a lot of couples in it, and it's a very social club.
I met Heather and Tony when they joined our bike group, and we rode together 2 or 3 times a week. So we really got to know each other, and we got on really well. Tony had finished his treatment, and they were trying to decide, do they come back to Albany or would it be easier to stay in Perth? All the services were in Perth, and where they lived in Bornholm just felt to be so far away. And I remember saying to her, where does Tony want to be? And she said, oh, he wants to be in Bornholm, you know Tony. And I said, well, if Tony wants to be in Bornholm and you're happy with that, let's make it work.
For many of us, when we imagine our own death, we often have a place that we're imagining that happening. For some of us, that is our own home, but the idea of having a choice where we might be able to die, and wherever that place is, it's a place that's treating us as a whole person with respect, love, dignity, kindness, not prolonging our dying, but also making our living still good. It's really the circle of people around them that make that a real choice or no choice at all.
I started to think about all the people who I'd been talking to in our cycle group, and they'd all been wondering how Tony was going and saying, can we help? What can we do? How can we help? And I thought, we have this network in our cycle group of support, an awesome network. I just thought there must be some way where we can organise it so that it works well for Tony, it works well for Heather, and it works well for us. All I did was put together a timetable of when people would visit Tony and Heather. Heather was really reluctant to ask people to do something, to go out of their way, to come out. It was a fair travel, you know, some people it was an hour's drive, and she was very reluctant to accept that help. And I said, if we have a roster, it's like once a month, you know, we share it around, we all do something. I spoke to Heather. She said, I miss going to the gym. I used to love going to the gym every Tuesday, every Thursday. I'd go to the gym and then I could have a coffee. I had time out, time to myself in Albany.
Pam approached me and said, look, Heather, we can get a roster going so that there's always someone there so that you can continue going to the gym. It's important for you to keep healthy and fit.
That's as important for her as it is having visitors for Tony. When you're in somebody's house, you're getting to see all their photos, their pictures, what they're doing. It's a much more personal thing. And so we've got to know them at that level. That's been great for Tony, having people come to his place, because he can talk about himself, he can go and get his books out, he can show you things. And when we go out there, all of us, we say, let's go outside, let's have a look at the garden. It's a beautiful property and he enjoys getting outside.
The last couple of days I've spent most of it out in the backyard where there's a lovely warm spot there until after lunch. And then I can go out the front there and sit in the sun, watch the bird life, watch the cows over the way. There's hardly any cars up this road. Something that's completely foreign to my life experience, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Right at the moment, the chance of me wanting to go to Perth and get another treatment is so low. It's not zero, but it's very close. I'd rather sit in that chair and look down that valley than be stuck up there in hospital, no matter how good it is, because it isn't going to cure it.
As a landlord, you couldn't ask for better tenants, but we don't think of them as tenants. They're our friends. You know, we've had New Year's with them, we've had Christmas with them.
We've been here for 6 years and they've become good friends, and he's very supportive of the current problem, and so our life has settled down here.
They said they'd like to come home, and I said, yeah, sure. If you want to come home. We'll help you in any way we can. Within the first couple of weeks, he had a fall in the toilet. And when he fell in the toilet, he really smashed his face on the bowl, and there was no way to contact anyone.
It was difficult for a while until we got this thing some time ago, which means that when she's not here, she knows that I can call her, or if she doesn't answer, Peter will get it. And if neither of them work, it goes to 000, who will say, what do you need, where are you?
But it's also to give Heather support as well, to reassure her that she knows that if she needs something, and it doesn't matter, 24/7, if she needs help, she just has to ring. I knew that there needed to be aids around the house, so I went ahead and I bought all the grab rails, and Tony and I worked out where he wanted them and how it would help him to have mobility around the house.
Young siding is a support mechanism. There's a few others around that if you had to call on them, they would drop everything and just come.
Because we're in town 4 days a week, we just said to Heather, if ever you need anything and you just don't want to go out or can't get out, just give us a call, because it doesn't bother us either way.
I first met Heather when she came into the shop. She was talking to Stuart for trainers for Tony. The trainer setup is pretty much you can ride your bike in a stationary position. You can go up hills, down hills in a virtual world. Thought I'd take it out and set it up for them. In a small community, it's really good to sort of be connected with your community as a business.
What we rejoice in is the circumstances of someone who is loved in their community, whose community feels that they have the capacity to step forward, and that person and their family is able to accept that love and care. And I think particularly in a rural environment, the practical solutions that often people are willing to bring to the table, those are the things that get people through. It's about being open to sharing the journey that you're going through in a way that actually allows those that are supporting you to grow as well as human beings.
We're a close group, we've become closer because we're doing something like this. We're used to being a supportive group, but this is a different experience. But we're talking about it now. We're talking about the end stages of our life, and we often have conversations about what we're doing amongst ourselves to prepare for that. So those conversations are quite wonderful to have. Everybody's very keen to keep going, and I think as we continue, our growth and our development as individuals in a group will be quite special.
The more you see that actually this is just part of life and it's going to happen to me too, I actually think the easier it is for you to die yourself when the time comes. Most people who are involved in caring for someone who's dying find that a really important growth time in their own life when they reflect and learn and perhaps change their priorities, perhaps start to do things really differently themselves. When you give it the dignity of a word such as vigil, that long history of humanity of sitting beside someone who's dying until they're gone and just keeping them company has a dignity and a meaning that sometimes is helpful. And so I think as well as becoming more familiar with dying, I think some of those old words are kind of helpful. It's hard that time sometimes when your job is just to hold a vigil, to respect the person as they still are, to look after their body with dignity, but you know that they've gone into that deep place and that they're leaving you.
What a great segue into my introduction shortly to Mayor Wellington. But that's a great example of network care, and we were very fortunate to be able to go on that journey with Tony and Heather. And Pam, who you saw throughout that film, was actually part of, I suppose, the language of change from being our stakeholder group to leadership group. She was really pivotal in putting all of that together. So just go to the slides. Okay, thank you. Just, yeah. There we are. So, I would like to introduce the Mayor. We've spoke a lot about leadership and passion and commitment. And I would like to say that Mayor Wellington definitely demonstrates that within our City of Albany. Most of the events and workshops and lessons learnt that you'll hear about today, he has attended and been very much part of. So I would like to introduce Dennis Wellington to talk about our experience and his support to the Compassionate Communities Charter within the City of Albany. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Lesley, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for the invitation today. 14% of people in Australia die at home. 70% want to. So it's absolutely a no-brainer of what we're trying to do. It's just a matter of getting off our backsides and doing it, because everybody else out there wants the help that we're trying to provide. So all the tools have been developed for you to do that. It's just a matter of getting involved, becoming part of it. And there are capacities to do that a lot of people aren't aware of. We have people working in our council whose wages are provided or paid for by other organisations, teaching our staff how to care for our community. And people like WAPA, WA Primary Health, a federally funded scheme, will help you do that. We have Rio Tinto, who pays for our youth council office. We have a youth council that advises our council on what the kids want in our town. The advisor is paid for by Rio Tinto. We house the person in our staff quarters. And she looks after the kids in the town, and they have a meeting with us, with council, a couple of times a year to tell you what the kids want. It is possible to do it. It's possible to do that if you're interested. One of the problems we have with local government is that we see a lot of cost shifting from state and federal governments onto local government because we're the closest to the community. The fact is, if you want to look after your community, then you get involved. And it's not a matter of cost. It's a matter of finding out what people want and how you can best look after them. We have a policy in our council, if something comes up as a motion to get passed, there's one rule. Is it going to be good for Albany? If it is, you pass it. I don't give a continental who puts it up, whether you like them, you hate them or anything like that. It's got nothing to do with it. Is the motion going to be good for Albany? You pass it. Finished. Done. Next. Not a matter of personalities, not a matter of egos. And then you work together very hard after that to make sure that you're a team, that you're all united in that one objective, which is to be the best thing for your community. And it's not so much the money of being the money involved or anything like that, it's the fact that you want to do a good job. That when COVID came along, we didn't really know what people were feeling and what they were doing. So we got a couple of people and sat them down and said, right, you ring them. You talk to, we've got a fairly elderly community in Albany, and we have a database, etc., and we have their phone numbers. So we said, you ring them and find out. And we had a couple of grumpy employees thinking, God's truth, Doreen, I've been handed a lemon here. This is not going to be much fun. At the end of the week, I said to the CEO, how are they going with ringing the constituents? And he said, they absolutely love it. He said, the feedback we're getting from these people is just sensational. The fact that you actually care enough to ring was extraordinary. And we had a community survey done this year, which we do every 2 years to find how we're going. 2 years ago, we were middle of the pack. This year, we were the number one in regional councils and second in the state to just improve our community awareness and our community involvement. So I actually see it as part and parcel of what you should do if you're involved in your community. And if you're involved in doing that, then you're helping your community. And part and parcel of that to me again is there should be no house built in your town or my town that's not big enough to have a hospital bed pass through the doorways or the passages. Says if 77% of the people want to die at home, they're going to be in a hospital bed of some sort. And if you want them to travel around the house and go into the lounge room where the rest of the people are, etc., they've got to be able to get through the doorway. That's just part and parcel of it again, of looking after your community and working with your community. And it doesn't take a lot of time, but I really object to some of the institutions that we've got in this country that are, to my mind, absolutely brainless and stupid. I have a brother who suffers from MS, and we have, right at the moment, 14 units being built in Albany for sufferers of MS, where their care facilities, etc., they have physiotherapy rooms, they have consulting rooms, etc., around these 14 units, and they can get their care. My brother's 73 years of age. I thought that would be a good place to go into because he's on a walker now. And not available to you, sunshine, you're over 65. The National Disability Scheme doesn't cover people over 65. How dumb's that? And what are we doing about that? 3 parts of 7/8 are not a lot. I don't get that. So every time I meet a politician, they go away thinking, God, that guy's a prick. Well, yeah, I am. Because I think you're just a bunch of numpties that shouldn't be allowed to be in control of those sorts of things. And if you don't get told, you're going to die wondering, and I really fear that people will die wondering. They should not be in that case. So you people are already invested in what you want to do. You're invested in looking after your communities. You're invested in looking after how people die. And it's very, very important. You know, people say to me, well, why did you get interested? Well, I was sitting at a cricket match in England and an announcement came over, I think it was at Leeds, a test match between Australia and England. Would Dennis Wellington from Perth please come to the match office? And I went to the match office and they said, there was a message here from your father, can you ring? And I said, is that it? And he said, that's it, ring Dad. So I went and rang Dad, and I said, what's the problem? He said, your brother's sick, he wants you to come home. I said, well, how sick? He said, very. Okay, so I got on a plane the next day and came home, and he died 5 months later of one thing called Ewing's tumour. And he was 18 and I was 26, and it hit me like a brick. I wasn't aware that those sort of things happened. I was in the 1970s, it was free love, free beer, free everything. And this sort of thing happened. And my uncle died 18 months later. He was the bloke that my brother lived with in Perth. And my father died 18 months after that. And my father-in-law, my wife's husband at the time, died the same week. And I thought, God's truth, Doreen, this is a world that I've never really come across, and it's a world I know absolutely nothing about, but the fact is not one of you are going to get out of here without dying in this game that we play in our lives, so why shouldn't we be interested in what we're doing? And I had a friend by the name of Michael Storm, who I played cricket with, and he got cancer and he was dying. I went to see him one day and I said, what's the thing that really troubles you most about your illness? He said, walking down the street and seeing people that I know 100 metres down the road, and they see me and they cross the road so they don't have to talk to me because they don't know what to say. And all I wanted to say is thanks for knowing you, and I'm pleased to have you in part of my life, but they'll cross the road so they don't have to say anything. Not fair, not reasonable, not anything that should happen in our lives. So as far as I'm concerned, I really thank what you're doing in Albany. We have an older community, and some people say, like this turkey from the Mayor of Bunbury, you go to Albany to die. Unfair, possibly correct, but still unfair. But if we've got a community like that that we need to look after, that we need to talk to, that we need to care for. There was an instance recently where a farmer's wife, the husband died. She'd never signed a cheque in her life, didn't know how to pay the bills, didn't know how to balance the budget, did not have a clue. So we had to get some carers to go in there to talk to her, to show her how to live the rest of her life, and she was totally bereft of any knowledge. Again, there are people out there that do that. And there are people like you that are prepared to help them out. So I thank you for what you do. I thank you for the interest that you've shown. And I just think it's terrific that we've got people like you that are prepared to do it. And I think we'll get to a stage where we're not afraid to talk about it, like the movie showed where they weren't afraid to talk about it. And it ended up being something that was a positive in their life instead of something being terrifying. There is a book which I read when my brother was sick by the doctor by the name of Dr. Anne Kubler-Ross called On Death and Dying. She only dealt with children because the children understood a hell of a lot better what was happening, and they could teach their parents where they were going and what was going to happen to them, and the parents could better understand how they were going to be left behind. And the other thing that was fortunate in my lifetime when my brother died was that my cricket coach at the time was a director of Bower & O'Day, the biggest funeral directors in Perth. And I said to him, I'm not too sure how I'm going to survive this lot. And he said, Dennis, don't forget him. Just learn to live without him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for sharing that with us. It really demonstrates in your leadership that you wear your heart on your chest, and it has been a fantastic benefit for not only our community in Albany but also the Great Southern. I must be... oh, no, go on, jumped ahead a little bit again, sorry. So I've only got, I think, 3 minutes left before... Oh, I've got 8 minutes, but we've got a film to show you as well at the end, which I think is really important. So this presentation is about what is a compassionate city charter. And so here you can see a collection of 6 different values that have been collated from the workshops that has been undertaken within the City of Albany. And again, as has come through very strongly with all the presentations today, that local government is an absolute pivotal partner. They already have existing programs and linkages to the community. And for example, in the City of Albany, the work that we were undertaking as part of the community charter was linked back into the Albany Community Strategic Plan and also the Public Health Plan. And I guess, you know, it's usual with human nature, what's in it for them. As part of the commitment from the city around the Compassionate City Charter, it is also around supporting them in the renewal and review of their public health plan, their strategic plan, their age-friendly plan, etc. So the Charter is really a set of values to guide the community and service providers, business groups and clubs to work together to create a more compassionate community. It has to be community driven, and it recognises that we don't get through hardship on our own. It encourages our community and our neighbourhoods and networks to play a much stronger role in supporting people through hardship. And we certainly found through COVID-19 and certainly from the workshops that that really was built on. So we'll just look at the approach. This approach that you see on the PowerPoint is actually a draft, and we have the final copies out on one of the displays out in the foyer if any of you are interested in taking one and having a look at that. So from this, and you can see up the top, we've really typified Albany. For those of you that have been down to the amazing Middleton Beach, you can see the jetty and Goodman's Island and King George Sound. And what this actually shows is the process that we went through in the approach to formulate the mapping, which was part of our Compassionate City workshops. So that includes having the environmental scan, the research that gets undertaken, the collaboration and integration, the action learning, and the community sustainability. So it's really that live snapshot of what some of the presentations have been about today. So that approach has then taken us to the community mapping. And from that, and again, there's a really nice A3 demonstration of that out in the foyer. You can see the vision down the bottom with the Compassionate Albany Charter, and then you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4 that link back into the approach, and you can see all the components that help us to have an integrated community care, the way we shift in our thinking, what are some of those real foundation blocks to that integration and building on relationships, and the cultural shift at the end of that. So this is a bit of a collage of all the different events that were undertaken within our community during the length of the project to bring us to the Compassionate Communities Charter. So there's Death for Beginners that we held at the Albany Summer School, which was a fantastic community asset. There's a death picnic with the 7-year anniversary with Irene, who's here in the crowd over there. So if anyone wants to have a talk to Irene at lunchtime, she's waving her hand, and she's been an amazing advocate for this whole project. Oh, sorry. And I can remember going into the city when I first spoke to Mayor Wellington about the fact that we had a death cafe in town, and there were a few other members of the city there, and they were quite shocked. And they're more shocked when I said, actually, the death cafe is run in one of your facilities down at Middleton Beach. And we've gone a long way since there. Dying to Know, we've done several films in that space. The Over 50 Cycling Club, which you've just seen, and a photo there of the Mall in Mount Barker, and the Happy to Chat bench, and that came out of some of the conversations, workshops and meetings that we had within the city. And so from that, we've had 6 charter workshops with faith groups and community service organisations, and what you're going to shortly see is how we listen to the voice of the community from those workshops. That included community members, business, sporting groups, government and service providers, early years network, youth advisory council, strategic workshops with elected members. Our council originally weren't on board. This has to go through a process of being endorsed, and we really do have a lot of support now, and the council are fully on board. And we had another 4 focus groups, which was our Aboriginal community, people living with disability, and the cold, Karen, and general practice. So we'll just go to showing the film next, please.
A compassionate community is a community that's connected and people that actually talk to each other face to face.
Welcome everybody to this workshop on compassionate communities and how we can make Albany a compassionate city.
Today we've talked about what we're already doing really well as a compassionate community, what can we do better, and then finally we talked about how can we really keep growing and improving, and what are the main things we can build on now. All of the volunteers, everyone who knows about it really can be a leader and go out there and spread the word. It's too much for one person. It's got to be a community responsibility.
Not everybody has a sense of belonging. There's people that have no families, they don't have contact with different groups on a day-to-day basis, so it's just important to have that sense of belonging with your community, and I think this is bringing it together beautifully. There's people from different areas of expertise, walks of life, that have different ideas, and once you pull them all together you can get a really big picture on what's going to work really well in your community and how we're going to get the message out and actually connect everybody up.
I think it's more of a blessing to give than to take, and I think in the heart of every person they want to give, but they're looking for that avenue of where can I actually give.
With everyone getting on that same page and having a guided way, that's the best thing that we can do. A charter and the City of Albany taking this on is going to increase, I think, the opportunities for any awareness raising, no matter what it is. My interest is always carers are compassionate people, they are giving, they are caregivers. They're the quiet achievers out there, and that's why they don't get the recognition for what they do. And that little bit of help, like a cooked casserole or someone sitting with them while they go and get their hair done, it's that sort of thing that doesn't cost people a lot of time, but means the world to someone who gives them an opportunity to get out or to go and do something that the average person can do.
I've heard something tonight that I've never heard of before, and a term called a death cafe, which I'd never heard of before. And yet when they explained how it works, it's really, really great initiative. We tend to think of ourselves as a club, group of people, and we look after each other. We definitely need to think wider in terms of the community, the wider community, and be more inclusive.
One of the topics that came up was the fact that I think we do really well in terms of getting to know your neighbour, which is really important. I'm really enjoying and learning so much from the older generations and how much wisdom they've got to pass on.
So we've kind of been talking about ways that we can support the community a little bit more with grieving, and ways that we can connect young people with the older generations.
We tend to focus on our own individual needs or our own perceived needs, whereas it's something that affects the community from the cradle to the grave, really. We need to have compassion starting at a very early age.
I was not aware of a lot of the things that I've heard today. So a lot of the organisations and things like that have come up, I was not aware of. But there were also organisations that I knew of that people didn't know of.
Sport clubs and associations can just be an active role in the glue that joins communities together. If they can be active contributors, joining up marginalised communities and people that are lonely, people that may show signs of disconnecting from community, to join them back into mainstream community. Sports can play that active role, being that active connector. I think it's a very progressive aspiration that the city has. It's shining a light on an opportunity, shining light of a challenge.
We can only get better, particularly if we take on board some of the lessons we're learnt tonight.
It's a step in the right direction. We're recognising there's a fragmentation in our community. We're recognising there's some really good things happening. And we're just looking at what we can do, how we can tweak it, what new things we need to do to move it forward, to build community and build into each other's lives. That's part of being in a community. Someone's got your back a bit. It's not perfect, but someone's got your back a bit. The flip side is, to be a good functioning, healthy community, you probably need to have someone's back a bit too. It's exciting to live here and be part of this, but get involved, ask yourself, what can I do to build a better community?
So I guess the takeaway from that is, what are we doing well as our community and what could we be doing better. And there's one little token or gift, Samar, that we would like to give to your community where you belong. I haven't got it with me now, but it's out there. We've brought up some amazing red gum and yellow tingle honey that sort of most probably crosses our borders, some of those bees out there on Dingo Flat Rocks road out at Walpole. But I mean, if we look at our bees, you know, they work collectively, they work as one, and they're always really well organised. So for all of your people that have been supporting, wearing those gorgeous purple Dockers colour vests, we would like to donate that from our region, and thank you very much for the invitation. I know certainly myself and as WAFA and the Mayor we're very pleased to be here. I would just like to point out Lisa, who's over in the back there, who's one of our community Compassionate Communities team members, is around also during lunchtime if anyone wants to chat to her as well. So thank you very much.